Sierra Kline wasn't planning on spending the weekend patching up a stranger's ankle in the middle of nowhere. But when a man stumbled into her campsite at dusk, limping and cursing under his breath, she didn't hesitate. "You're hurt," she said, dropping the pan of beans she'd been cooking over the fire and rushing to his side. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and clearly in pain, wincing with every step as he leaned against a tree. Dirt streaked his jeans, his T-shirt clung to his chest with sweat, and his dark hair was tousled like he'd taken a tumble down a slope. "It's nothing," he grunted, but the way he clenched his jaw said otherwise. Sierra narrowed her eyes. "You're limping like a 90-year-old man. Sit down before you fall over." She grabbed her first aid kit from her backpack, gesturing to the log by the fire. He hesitated, then dropped onto the log with a grunt. "Fine, I twisted it on a rock about 2 miles out. Thought I could walk it off, but—" "You definitely didn't walk it off." She knelt in front of him, gently pulling up the leg of his jeans. His ankle was already swelling. "You're lucky you found my site. There's no signal out here and the ranger station is closed after 5. He gave her a tired smile. "Guess I got lucky." "I'm Sierra," she said as she wrapped the bandage around his ankle. He looked at her for a moment too long before answering. Adam Ashford." She nodded, not recognizing the name, focused on her work. "Okay, Adam, you're going to need to keep weight off this for at least 24 hours. You can stay here tonight. I've got an extra sleeping bag." He blinked. "You're serious?" "I'm not about to let a guy with a busted ankle hobble around the woods alone. You'd probably get eaten by a raccoon." Adam let out a low laugh. "Is that your idea of a rescue pitch?" "No, that's my idea of basic decency," she said, standing. "Stay off that foot. I'll get you some food." As the fire crackled and the stars started to peek through the trees, Sierra handed him a tin mug filled with soup and sat across from him. "So what brings you out here?" she asked. "Needed some air," he said simply. "Been working too much, thought some quiet might help." "Same," she said. "City gets loud, nature helps me breathe again." Adam studied her across the fire. "You camp alone often?" "Yeah. Grew up doing this with my dad. He taught me how to survive with just a backpack and a map. He passed 2 years ago, so now I come out here when I miss him." Adam's expression softened. "I'm sorry," Sierra offered a small smile. "It's okay." He'd probably be thrilled I'm helping some random stranger with a sprained ankle in the woods. Adam laughed again. "Well, tell him I appreciate it." They spent the rest of the night talking about books, music, and her job as a high school art teacher in Portland. She didn't ask Adam what he did for a living, and he didn't offer. She figured he was probably some burnt-out tech guy trying to unplug. By the time they fell asleep him in the extra sleeping bag, her in her tent, they'd talked for hours. When she woke the next morning, Adam was standing by the fire pit, balancing on one foot and holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You shouldn't be standing," she scolded. "I'm stubborn," he said, handing her a mug, "and I wanted to thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet." "You're still stuck here until your ankle stops looking like a balloon," he grinned. "Then I guess I've got time to earn my keep. You need water. I can hop to the stream." Sierra rolled her eyes but couldn't help the smile tugging at her lips. "You're ridiculous." "I'm resourceful," he countered. And somehow, over the next 3 days, being stuck in the woods with Adam didn't feel like a burden. It felt like the exact thing Sierra hadn't known she needed. They cooked together, hiked short trails with Adam leaning heavily on a walking stick, and played cards under the stars. When he told her she made the best campfire pancakes he'd ever had, she flushed. When she caught him watching her while she braided her hair, she pretended not to notice the way her cheeks heated. On the 4th morning, his ankle looked better. The swelling was down and he could walk without wincing. "I should head back today," he said, eyes lingering on her face. "But—" "I want to see you again, Sierra." She looked down, unsure what to say. "I don't even know what you do. You could be some Wall Street finance bro with a yacht and a girlfriend in every city." Adam stepped closer. "I'm not." She crossed her arms. "Then tell me who you are." He hesitated, then pulled out his wallet and handed her a black card. Sierra stared at the name. "Adam Ashford." "Wait," she said slowly. "Ashford as in Ashford Tech," he nodded. "CEO, billionaire, all of that. I didn't want to lead with it." She blinked. "You're joking." "I wish I was," he said, his voice serious. I didn't want you to treat me any differently, but I couldn't leave without telling you the truth. Sierra looked at him. This man who had slept in the dirt, made her laugh, and watched the stars with her every night. You're a billionaire, she repeated. Yes, and you've been eating beans out of a can for 4 days, he chuckled. Best beans I've ever had. She shook her head, laughing despite herself. You're insane. But I'm real, he said softly, and I want this to continue. Not because I'm used to getting what I want, but because I don't think I've ever met someone like you. Sierra stared at him, heart-thudding. I want to see you again, he said. In the city, in real life, no tents, no sleeping bags, just us. She took a breath. Okay, his eyes lit up. Yeah, she said. But next time you're cooking. Adam grinned. Deal. Neither of them knew it yet, but that weekend in the woods was only the beginning. The moment Sierra stepped into the marble-floored atrium of the Ashford Tower, she regretted not bringing a second pair of shoes. Her boots had been fine for the train ride into the city, but now, surrounded by polished glass walls and people who moved like they were late for something important, she felt like a misplaced puzzle piece. A woman with a sharp blazer and sharper cheekbones approached her. Miss Kline. Sierra nodded. Right this way, the woman said, turning without waiting for a response. They crossed the lobby to a private elevator guarded by a man in a dark suit and earpiece. The doors slid open silently. She didn't ask questions. She just stepped inside and tried not to fidget with the hem of her jacket, the only semi-professional thing she owned. As the elevator rose, her reflection shimmered in the mirrored walls. She looked like she was holding her breath. When the doors opened again, it wasn't to an office. It was a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows poured sunlight over a living space the size of a school gymnasium. Cream furniture, abstract art, a telescope by the window. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something citrusy. Adam stood near the kitchen island, dressed in dark slacks and a steel blue button-down. He leaned against the counter, sipping from a glass of something iced with lemon slices floating at the top. You made it, he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. I almost turned around at the curb, Sierra admitted. A guy in a 3-piece suit glared at me for breathing too loud. He grinned. Welcome to downtown. She stepped further inside, scanning the space. You live here? I do, he said, setting down the glass. But I don't bring many people here. Sierra met his eyes. So why me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the cabinet and pulled down a small ceramic plate. You hungry? Is that a deflection? It's a polite way of buying time. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folded napkin. I wasn't sure if you'd actually come. I said I would. People say a lot of things, he said, placing a croissant on the plate and sliding it toward her. But you showed up, that matters. She took the plate and sat on one of the bar stools. I almost didn't. Adam leaned forward on his elbows. Because of me or because of the skyscraper, she hesitated. Because I don't know where I fit in this world. You don't have to fit, he said. You just have to be here. Sierra broke off a piece of the croissant and looked at him. What is this, Adam? He turned the question over in his mind, then walked to the window. She followed him, croissant in hand. I've been in this building for 6 years, he said. Built it from a blueprint I drew on the back of a napkin. I've pitched to governments, bought out companies, flown across oceans to close deals. I've been applauded in rooms where no one knew my middle name. Sierra stood beside him, waiting, but that weekend in the woods. No phones, no pretense, no headlines. That was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was performing. And now, she asked, I don't want to go back to the version of me that only exists in boardrooms and press releases. He turned to her. I want to try something real. With you, she looked at him, really looked. His voice was steady, but there was something uncertain in his eyes, hesitation, maybe even hope. I don't know if I'm built for this, she said. I teach teenagers how to shade apples and use paint thinner. I eat cereal for dinner and forget to charge my phone. I've never been on a private elevator before today. His mouth tilted at the corner, not quite a smile. Then let me meet you there. How? Tomorrow, he said. Let me come to your world. No suits, no assistants, no cars that cost more than a house. Just me. I'll bring lunch. You're volunteering to walk into a high school art room during finals week, he shrugged. I once negotiated a merger while landing a plane. I think I can handle paintbrushes and sarcasm. She narrowed her eyes. You're serious, he nodded. Entirely. Sierra folded her arms. Fine, but if you cause a scene or make one of my students cry, I'm never letting you back on campus. He extended his hand. Deal? She shook it, and for a beat too long, neither of them let go. Later, walking through the lobby again, she passed a woman in heels so high they defied physics. The woman glanced down at Sierra's worn boots, then away. Sierra didn't care. She had crumbs on her sleeve, a billionaire's number in her phone, and tomorrow's lunch plans with the most unexpected man she'd ever met. And for the first time since stepping into that glass and gold world, she didn't feel out of place, she just felt seen. Sierra balanced a battered plastic tray in one hand as she nudged the art room door open with her shoulder. She'd spent her lunch break grabbing sandwiches from the corner deli before sprinting back to beat the bell. Her classroom always smelled faintly of turpentine and pencil shavings, but today there was something else in the air: anticipation. Adam was already there. Not in a suit, not behind glass walls or standing beside private elevators, but in jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers that looked like they'd never seen a red carpet. He was crouched by a student's easel, nodding along as a boy explained his charcoal sketch of a gnarled tree. I didn't expect you this early, Sierra said, setting the tray on her desk. I caught the train, he replied without looking up. Didn't want to show up in a black car and freak out the parking monitor. The words were casual, but she caught the faint flush in his cheeks as he stood. He looked taller in this room, less polished, more real. One of her students, a girl with a buzzcut and paint-streaked hands, leaned toward Sierra as she passed. Is that your boyfriend? Sierra nearly dropped the tray. He's a friend. The girl raised an eyebrow but said nothing, retreating to her seat with a knowing grin. Adam wandered over, eyeing the tray. What's on the menu? Please say it's not quinoa. Turkey and cheddar or ham and Swiss. Deli counter was out of everything else, she said, handing him a sandwich. He peeled back the wrapper and took a bite. Best thing I've had all week. No way, she said, sitting beside him at her desk. You probably eat truffle risotto for breakfast, he chewed thoughtfully. Yesterday I had a protein shake in a moving car. Sounds glamorous, exhilarating. Sierra turned to face him. You're really doing this, sitting in a public school art room surrounded by half-dried oil paints and crumbling plaster busts. I meant what I said. I wanted to see your world. She studied him for a moment. It's not fancy. Kids can barely afford supplies and the heating system breaks every December. But they're creating things, he said, glancing around. They're learning how to express themselves. That's rare. Most people don't get it. I'm not most people, she leaned back in her chair. You don't flinch at the chaos. I like it. It's honest. Sierra folded her arms. You know this doesn't make sense, right? This thing, whatever it is, you're a walking headline. I grade watercolor projects and spend my weekends watching documentaries about endangered frogs. Adam leaned forward. I've been interviewed by journalists who called me brilliant without asking what I cared about. You asked me why I didn't tell you who I was. That meant something. She hesitated. You still haven't told me why you were in the woods. I bought the land, he said quietly. 30 acres outside the park. I was considering building a retreat center, but when I got there, I couldn't picture it. I couldn't breathe. So I wandered and sprained your ankle. Best decision I ever made. Sierra looked away, unsure what to do with the sudden weight behind his words. You know, Adam added, I didn't get the land. Why not? Because I realized I didn't want to change it. I wanted to remember it the way it was. She turned back to him slowly. You're not what I expected, neither are you. Before she could respond, the warning bell rang. Students began filing in, some giving Adam curious glances. He stood, brushing crumbs off his jeans. I should go, he said. Didn't mean to hijack your class. You didn't. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I wanted to give you something. She unfolded it. It was a charcoal sketch, her, sitting by the firelight, hair in a braid, eyes half closed in thought, her breath caught. You drew this. I remembered the way the light hit your face that night, he said. I wanted to keep it. Sierra stared at the drawing, then at him. You can't just say things like that and leave. I'm not leaving, he said. Not unless you tell me to. She stepped closer. This is moving fast. I don't want to waste time. You don't even know what I want. Then tell me. She pressed the sketch to her chest. I want to be sure this isn't charity. That you're not playing some game with a girl who has more paint under her nails than polish on her shoes. Adam's gaze held hers. I don't do charity, and I don't play games. The final bell rang. He stepped back. Dinner, tonight, my place, no staff. Just me and you. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. He left without another word, slipping out just as the room filled with the noise of teenagers and the scrape of chairs. Sierra slid the sketch into her drawer, heart pounding. This wasn't just a fling, something was happening. Something neither of them had planned. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of where it might lead. The door to Adam's penthouse swung open before Sierra could knock twice. She paused in the threshold. The last time she'd walked into this space, it had felt like a museum, elegant, hushed, and too polished to touch. Now, the lights were warmer, dimmed just enough to soften the edges of the gleaming surfaces. Music drifted from invisible speakers, low, jazzy piano notes winding through the air like smoke. Adam stood barefoot in dark jeans and a soft gray Henley, sleeves pushed up to his elbows. His hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run his hands through it more than once in the last hour. You came, he said, stepping aside. I almost didn't, she said as she walked in, slipping off her jacket. I stood outside for 5 minutes making deals with myself. I'm glad you lost the argument, he said, gesturing toward the kitchen. I cooked. You, she asked, eyebrows lifting. Is that legal? I consulted 3 recipe blogs and burned the first batch of risotto. I'd say it was a full commitment. She followed him to the open kitchen, where the counter was laid out with 2 plates, a bottle of wine, and candles flickering in low glass holders. Risotto, she asked, scanning the dishes, with mushrooms and something green I can't pronounce, he said. Also, garlic bread as backup in case I ruined everything. She sat on one of the stools. You really didn't have to, I wanted to. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The risotto was surprisingly good, creamy, earthy, balanced. She didn't tell him that, though. Not yet. You know, she said finally, setting down her fork. The first time I saw you, I thought you were either a lost hiker or a serial killer. He tilted his head. And now, I'm still not ruling anything out, he laughed, head dropping for a moment before he looked back at her. Can I ask you something? Sure. Have you ever thought about leaving Portland? She blinked. What? Not permanently, he said quickly. Just for a little while. A change of scenery. I have a place in Florence. It's quiet, near the coast. I go there when I need to shut out the world. She stared at him. Why are you asking me this? Because I'm leaving for a week, he said, and I want you to come with me. She leaned back. Adam. I know it's fast, he said, voice steady. But I don't want to do this halfway. I want time with you, real time, not stolen hours between meetings and lesson plans. She stood and walked to the window, arms crossed. The city glittered beneath them, distant and unreal. I can't just disappear, she said. I have students, a schedule. I already spoke to your principal, he said gently. I made a donation to cover new supplies for the department. In return, she's giving you 5 days. She said you haven't taken personal time in over a year. Sierra turned slowly. You went behind my back. I asked if there was a way to make space for you, he said. I didn't want to pressure you. But I needed to know if the option existed. She walked back to the counter, her expression unreadable. I don't do this. I don't change my whole life for someone I just met. Adam's voice dropped. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking if you'll share a part of it. With me? She studied his face. There was no performance in his eyes, no practiced lines or rehearsed charm, just a man who'd once limped into her campsite and stayed longer than either of them expected. Florence is a long way from here, she said. I'll be with you the whole time. What if it doesn't work? Then we'll know we tried, he said. But I think it will. I think we're already proving it. She looked down at the candlelight flickering between them, then up again. Fine. 1 week. His smile was slow, but it reached all the way to his eyes. I'll book the flight. No jets. He paused. Commercial's going to be tricky with the security detail. You're impossible. I'm flexible. The next morning, they boarded a private plane as the sun crept over the horizon. Sierra sat by the window, watching the clouds drift like pulled cotton. Adam sat beside her, a sketchpad in his lap. He didn't draw her this time. He let the pencil move across the page, quiet and thoughtful. They landed in a coastal town outside Florence, where a stone villa waited atop a hill, surrounded by olive trees and silence. The sea was visible from nearly every room, blue and endless. On the third night, as they walked through the orchard behind the house, Sierra stopped beneath a lantern-strung fig tree and turned to him. "I haven't felt this light since before my dad got sick." Adam reached for her hand. "I didn't know I could feel like this at all." She stepped closer, pressing her palm to his chest. "What happens when we go back? We figure it out. One step at a time." "You're not just saying that. I've never been more certain of anything." It wasn't a declaration shouted from a mountaintop. It wasn't a speech in front of a crowd. It was two people standing beneath a fig tree in the middle of Italy, breathing each other in. When they returned home a week later, hand in hand, Sierra found her classroom filled with new canvases, fresh supplies, and a note from her students that read, "We missed you, but we're glad you smiled when you came back." Adam didn't move back into his tower right away. He stayed in a modest apartment near her school, learned to make lasagna from scratch, and walked her to work on rainy mornings, umbrella in one hand, her fingers in the other. 6 months later, under a canopy of string lights in the backyard of the house they'd just bought together, he got down on one knee with a ring shaped like a falling star. And Sierra, who never thought she'd find anything permanent again, said yes. Not because of the villa in Florence or the sketch he'd left in her drawer, but because when he looked at her, it felt like the world had finally gone quiet, and she could breathe again. The morning of the wedding dawned with a sky so clear it looked painted. The sun filtered through the tall pine trees surrounding the lakeside estate they'd rented for the weekend, casting golden streaks across the wooden deck. Sierra stood barefoot in the center of the master bedroom, her bare shoulders glowing in the soft light as her sister clipped the final pearls into her hair. "Don't move," Harper said, tilting her head. "You look like someone pulled you out of a Renaissance painting." Sierra smiled at her reflection. The dress was unlike anything she ever imagined, wearing simple ivory silk that hugged her softly, with a low back and a flowing train that caught the breeze. Nothing glittered, nothing screamed for attention, and yet it looked exactly like her. "I can't believe this is real," she whispered. Harper stepped back to admire her. "I can, the way he looks at you. I've never seen anyone look at another person that way, like you're the first and last thing he's ever going to believe in." Sierra turned from the mirror, her heart thudding. "Is everyone in place?" "They're all out back by the lake. Adam's already there." "He hasn't stopped pacing." "He's nervous," Harper grinned. "He's wrecked. In a good way." Sierra pressed a hand to her chest. "Good." Outside, white chairs lined the edge of the water, facing an arch of wildflowers and driftwood Adam had helped build himself. Every guest was someone who mattered, friends from Portland, a few of Adam's closest team members, and the students Sierra had mentored, now graduated and grinning from the back row. There were no camera crews, no press, no branded hashtags. Only the sound of water lapping against the dock, and the violinist playing something soft and slow as she stepped down the wooden path toward the man waiting for her. Adam stood in a navy suit, no tie, his hair swept back with just enough disarray to still look like him. When he saw her, everything else faded. His breath visibly caught, and he didn't look away, not once, as she walked toward him. When she reached him, he didn't wait for the officiant to speak. "I need to say something before anything else happens," he said quietly, taking both her hands. "I don't care if it's out of order." The officiant nodded and stepped back. Adam's voice was steady, but his eyes shimmered. "My whole life, I've been surrounded by people who say yes to me, who give me what I want because of what I have. But you didn't look at me and see a CEO or a billionaire. You saw a guy with a busted ankle and a bad attitude who needed help. You didn't just see me. You challenged me. You made me uncomfortable. You made me better." Sierra's fingers tightened in his. "I don't want a life that makes sense on paper. I want one that makes me feel the way I did that first night we sat by the fire. I want a life that's messy and unpredictable and filled with paint-stained shirts and burnt pancakes and you." She swallowed hard, blinking fast. "Then it's a good thing I brought all of that." When it was her turn, she didn't read the vows she'd written. She just looked at him and let the words rise. "You don't fix me, Adam. You don't complete some missing piece. You just walk beside me exactly as I am and make the road feel less lonely. You're not a fairy tale. You're something better, something real. And I want to keep building this life with you, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. They were married as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting the lake in shades of gold. When they kissed, it wasn't the kind of kiss meant for an audience. It was deep and sure, the kind that made promises without needing to say a single word. That night, the reception bloomed under strings of lights and long banquet tables filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Adam pulled her onto the dance floor early, ignoring the music as he spun her gently beneath the stars. "I don't want this night to end," she murmured into his shoulder. He kissed the side of her neck. "Then it won't, not really." "It's just the beginning." Later, when the last of the guests had gone and the lanterns glowed low, Sierra wandered barefoot down to the dock, her dress gathered in one hand. Adam followed, 2 glasses in the other and a bottle of something they'd been saving for the right moment. They sat at the edge, feet dangling over the water. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Sierra asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I said you saved me." She looked up at him. "You did the same for me." He slid a ring onto her finger, a second one, thinner than the wedding band with a tiny sapphire set into the underside. "This is for the nights you can't sleep, when the world feels too loud. I want you to remember this moment, right here." Quiet and hours. Sierra touched the stone. "I'll never forget it." They didn't need more words after that. The lake stretched out before them, quiet and endless, and the rest of the world faded away. 3 years later, the same dock was covered in blankets and pillows, and a basket filled with art supplies and snacks. A toddler with wild curls toddled between Sierra and Adam, clutching a paintbrush in one hand and a fistful of apple slices in the other. "She has your concentration," Adam said, watching their daughter stare intently at a smudge of blue paint on her paper. "She has your stubbornness," Sierra replied, laughing as the little girl refused to let go of the brush even as she wobbled. They sat side by side, watching their daughter paint the lake in accidental swirls of green and purple. "You know," Adam said, "I never thought happiness would look like this." Sierra leaned into him, brushing her paint-stained fingers against his. "Neither did I. But I'm so glad it does." The wind rustled through the trees above them, the lake glittered in the afternoon sun, and their daughter laughed as she dipped her entire hand into the paint. It wasn't perfect, it was better.